When you start creating videos for YouTube, you're excited. You have all these ideas in your head. You're excited about getting things set up. We're talking about getting out the tripod, setting up your lights just right. But after a while, things become a little bit more difficult. You start to lose motivation, and you use any excuse not to shoot. The tripod is now a hassle to set up. Even the thought of transferring files from your SD card to your computer seems pretty daunting. My name is Patrick, and this is Everyday Tech. Everyday Tech for everyday people. And in this video, I'm going to take you through my entire YouTube workflow and show you how my iPad has really eliminated most of the hurdles of making my YouTube videos. Now, when I talk about YouTube workflows, I'm mainly talking about four main areas: creating, capturing, editing, and publishing. Now, what has really changed the game for me are two changes that happened with the iPad in 2023. First, it was a release of Final Cut Pro on the iPad, and then it was a release of iPad OS 17, and specifically UVC support, where now the iPad now supports external webcams or external capture cards. Now, I've done dedicated videos on these two main changes, but I'll mention them as I go through my entire workflow here. Now, when I talk about creating, I'm mainly talking about everything up to the time before I set up and start recording. Now, we're mainly talking about formulating ideas, writing out either a script or an outline. There are instances where I start recording and kind of just improv on the spot, but those times are rare. The key thing for me, and especially if I want to get these videos out on a regular schedule, is to stay organized. Of course, it should come as no surprise if you've been following my channel for a while. The way I stay organized is through Notion. Now, Notion is a productivity and note-taking app that you can use to think, write, and plan. Now, I'm going to do a whole dedicated video on how I use Notion to organize my content creation. I have a dedicated Notion page that keeps me on track and lets me know where I'm at in the process of completing a video. Now, these days, I'm mostly scripting out my videos. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm using a teleprompter for a given video, although I'm starting to use a teleprompter more, but it's a way for me to get out ideas and just talk out my videos. So whether on the desktop, laptop, or on my iPad, I'm constantly writing scripts for Notion. Now, I have a dedicated template or a section in my video template to just start writing out ideas. But it's something about the iPad where I feel like I can take it anywhere and just start writing. And to get over writer's block, I'm constantly changing up my environment, whether it be at different coffee shops in the city, or when I'm waiting for my kids during their swim class, or when I'm at home, either on my home office, couch, or bed. I'm just constantly writing a little bit here and there. Now, once I have the script written out, it's time to record. Remember I talked about the hassle of setting up? Well, I've eliminated this hurdle mainly with my YouTube Studio on a stand. I did a dedicated video on this about a month or two ago, and I've done a few changes, minor changes since that video, but basically it's still the same. I pop on my camera, make sure all the cables are connected, set up my iPad, and I'm ready to go. So what am I using the iPad for? Well, I did a video on using the iPad as a field monitor, which I'm definitely doing more, but I'm taking it a step further. Remember I talked about the hassle of transferring footage from your SD card to a computer? Well, the way I'm getting around this hurdle is that I'm recording all my video into the iPad directly. Because this iPad OS now supports the ability to use capture cards with UVC support, I'm taking the output from my mirrorless camera, bringing it into my iPad, and using a capture card and recording the video directly through an app called CamX. Now, there is something to note here. I found out for the best results, I can really only shoot in 1080p, which is not a big deal for me because most of my videos I release are in 1080p anyway. But I did try to capture at 4K using the Elgato Camlink card. But I found out later when I brought it into Final Cut Pro that it was only capturing at 15 frames per second, even though it said it was capturing at 30 frames per second. I think it's a limitation of the iPad. Now, even though this is an M1 iPad Pro, and I haven't even really tried out the M2 iPad Pro yet, but I'm curious to see how it will capture in future iPad Pros. Now, actually, in CamX, I have no way of changing the resolution of the Elgato Camlink down to 1080p, so I'm using one of these generic capture cards to capture video. For me, I hit record on the iPad, and I'm ready to go. So I record in different sections at a time, and not all in one take. So I'm doing a lot of multiple takes, so there's a lot of clips that pile up, that I'm constantly deleting and saving. One of the ways I'm trying to eliminate the number of takes, though, is the use of a teleprompter. This is one of my newer additions to my setup. This is the Ulanzi RT02 teleprompter, an amazing little teleprompter for $50. Now, I didn't even know Ulanzi made teleprompters until I saw it on their website. Now, they don't sell this on Amazon. You can only buy it directly from their website. But I'll be doing a dedicated video in the near future on this teleprompter. If I do want to record in 4K, I'll record directly to the SD card on my camera. And I'll even use log on my Sony camera, as Final Cut Pro has really good S-Log support built in on the iPad. Now, if I do this, I'll have to bring out the card reader, transfer it directly to my iPad, or connect a USB cable from my camera to my iPad directly. But because this camera is a little bit older, it only has micro USB, and it only has USB 2.0, which is so much slower. So whenever I upgrade to another camera or a newer camera, having USB 3.0 is a must-have. But if I'm not at home, or if I don't bring my mirrorless camera with me, I don't mind recording either on my iPhone and transferring the footage directly with AirPlay. I'll even record directly on my iPad using Final Cut Pro's camera app. Now, I mentioned this in my Final Cut Pro app iPad review. I wish Final Cut Pro, like the camera app, supported UVC, so I can just record directly from my mirrorless camera into Final Cut Pro and not have to go through another app called CamX. Now, please, Apple, please put this in. But after capturing all my main talking head clips, I either go right into editing or capture some B-roll shots that I know that I'm going to need. But usually I do my main timeline edits and then figure out the B-roll shots that I need to do. So now I have my main footage recorded and on my iPad. We come to the part I enjoy the most, editing. Now, the main editor, of course, that I use is Final Cut Pro on the iPad. I've been using Final Cut Pro on the Mac for a little while, so using Final Cut Pro on the iPad was a very natural and familiar switch. Now, I've used LumaFusion as well, which I think is a great app, but there's something about Final Cut Pro on the iPad that makes it my main editor now. Now, check out the dedicated video I did on it, but I think what sells it for me is the fact that I can sit down anywhere with my iPad and just edit my videos. Now, I could do that with my laptop, but again, the portability of the iPad and the familiarity of Final Cut Pro already sells it for me. As I mentioned before, after I do my main timeline edits, I consider what B-roll shots I need. I play through the video and see the areas that I need to shoot B-roll for. Of course, to keep track of this, I go through my Notion page. I put the description of the B-roll and the time code of where it goes in the video. Now, after I jot everything down, I go back to shoot all the B-roll shots, hopefully everything at the same time if possible. Sometimes I want to shoot at a specific location, and sometimes it'll just have to come later. Now, after shooting the B-roll and getting it into the iPad, I insert it into my main timeline. There is an area that I need to talk about, which is audio. Because I'm using my YouTube studio on a stand, one of the things that I'm not using is my better microphone. The main microphone I've been using is a cheap shotgun microphone from Techstar, or I use my first generation Rode wireless microphone. Now, the audio goes through some processing, but I don't do the processing myself. This is one of the areas I'm using AI for on a regular basis. I'm using Adobe's Enhanced Speech tool. Now, if you go to podcast.adobe.com, you'll see that you'll have a number of tools specifically for audio. This really does a great job of processing the audio with few little glitches here and there. After processing all the audio, though, I put it back into the main timeline, and I'm ready to put my final touches on the video, which includes beginning and end buffers and my usual video title screens, which I actually use creating Keynote. So I edit the title on my iPad using Keynote, export it as a movie, insert it into my timeline where it needs to go, do a little trimming on it, and then we're ready to go. One more final review of the video, sometimes at 2x speed, and it's ready for publishing. Publishing starts with exporting the final video from Final Cut Pro. I usually save it to my photos gallery on my iPad. Then I upload it either through the YouTube or YouTube Studio app. Now, if I'm at home, I'll transfer a copy of the video to my network attached storage drive or my NAS drive. I'll put in an initial placeholder title and a placeholder description. But this is where I very much prefer the web page version of the YouTube Studio instead of the YouTube Studio app on the iPad. It's just so much easier to set things up, especially things like monetization settings and other YouTube settings. So I will sometimes do this on my desktop as well. But from here, I'll work on my thumbnail, which usually involves a picture of the product, either by itself or me holding it up. I use Canva for all my thumbnail work, either by getting some inspiration from their built-in templates or just coming up with something on my own. I actually don't spend too much time on the thumbnail, but this is an area that I would greatly like to improve on. I'd also like to greatly improve on my titles and descriptions as well. This is an area I really want to improve on as well. And the last thing I do is go through the timeline on Final Cut Pro and look at the chapter markers and put those in the description. After that, I'm pretty much done. I just make sure I schedule the release of my videos, which is usually on Wednesday or Thursdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this has been a run through of my entire YouTube workflow. Now this is just a guide for me, and I'm pretty flexible as far as the process is concerned. Sometimes I think of ideas of B-roll shots even before the main video is completed, so I'd go ahead and shoot those B-roll shots anyway. The main thing for me is to create a workflow that eliminates as much busy work as possible and eliminate any excuse not to shoot. I hope this video was helpful for you. Hope it gives you some ideas on how you can improve your own workflow as well. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Until the next one, see ya.